Now, you were asked to complete a circle like this at one point in your life. You were said, hey, you were told, you got to memorize these. I used to have my kids complete charts like this. So for those of you that had to complete charts like this with the stressed, you must memorize this. I hate things that memorize. I really hate to have things memorized. But once you did memorize this, things got a little bit easier. But I said you must memorize this information. Now, in reality, you really only had to memorize, mostly just this. Because all the rest of it's just repeated with signs. But then you had to come over here and you had to memorize all of these angles and all of these measures. And then there were weird things like, here you had the square root of 3 over 2 and 1/2. What? And then this one was the square root of 2 over square root of 2, and this was square root of 2 over 2. And then you had to go to the tangents, and this was the square root of 3 over 3, and this was just the square root of 3. And you're like, what? How do I remember that stuff? And then I had kids every year not able to just kind of get the idea of what was going on or commit it to memory. And then, quite honestly, I had kids the following year not remember it either. So I talking with some colleagues, and they said, well, I heard about this method. It's pretty cool. I'm not sure where they learned it from. Maybe they came up with it or not, but I'm going to share it with you. And all it involves is your left hand. All it involves is your left hand. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to use our left hand to represent the first quadrant. So we're going to use our left hand, and it's going to represent our first quadrant. Very simply. So down here will be 0 degrees. This will be 30. All the important angles. This will be 45 degrees. I should probably put a dot here, a dot here, a dot here. 60 degrees. And 90 degrees. So here's how it works. And it's really quite simple. A couple basic things that you must understand before we go on. Okay, so a couple things you got to understand. Let's see if I think I got the right pen. First things first, if I'm talking about coordinate axes, you have to know that the cosine represents the x values and the sine represents the y value. Now we're talking about the unit circle, right? Back the old way where you had the unit circle where the radius was 1 and you had to come up with these values of these points, right? We're remembering this old method where we're talking about the unit circle. Another simple fact that you have to remember is that tangent of theta is equal to y over x. Or in other words, and what you're going to learn later, or if you've already learned it, that's cool too, is that tangent of theta is really sine over cosine. So in terms of the unit circle, it becomes y over x. But in general, it's just the sine of the angle divided by the cosine of the angle. Now we're going to need that information to do this work. So here's how it works. Let's say the teacher said, okay, what is the sine of 30 degrees? Now, if you don't know that's 1/2 and you're sitting there going, I don't know, how am I supposed to memorize all this stuff? Here's how it works. Whatever the angle measure is the finger you eliminate. Now, you have to kind of keep your hand in front of your face and eliminate that ring finger. Or in your case, if I do it for you, eliminate that ring finger. Now, why would I want to do that? Well, let's see what we do. We get rid of this finger. It no longer exists. Gone. All right. Finger's gone. So what do I have here? I have, now this represents now the comma. So there's my comma. On the left side, I have 3 fingers. 1, 2, 3. Now, if your teacher went through some conversions, all of these are going to be divided by 2. All of them. Every one of them. No matter what we do, we're always going to divide by 2. And then the numerator is going to be the fingers that remain. And we're going to take the square root of those. All right, so I got 3 fingers that remain. That's the square root of 3. I've got So I got 3 fingers to the left, 1, 2, 3, and I only have 1 finger to the right, 1. So remember, this is cosine of theta, and this is sine of theta. So if I come over here and I said, oh, the sine of 30 degrees is 1/2. If I ask for the cosine of 30 degrees, oh, there that is right there. That's the square root of 3/2. Let's do a few more examples. And let me put back. Okay, so let's get rid of, oh, let's see, what do I want to do now? I'll get to tangent in a few minutes. Let's say I want to do the cosine of 45 degrees. Okay, now 45 degrees is represented by that finger right there. So how many fingers do I have to the left? 2. How many fingers do I have to the right? 2. Now don't be that kid that says, Mr. Krause, the thumb is not a finger. For this purpose it is. So I have 2 fingers to the left, 2 fingers to the right. There it is, the cosine. Remember, this is cosine, and this is sine in the unit circle. And that is the square root of 2/2. Sine of 45 is the square root of 2/2 as well. All right, let's get rid of those. Let's try again. All right, let's say I ask you to find, let's do a difficult one. Let's say I ask you to find the cosine of 0 degrees. All right, so this represents 0. Get rid of my thumb. Thumb's gone. So how many fingers do I have to the left? I have 4 to the left. How many fingers do I have to the right? I got 0 to the right. Well, what is the square root of 4? Isn't the square root of 4 just 2? And 2 divided by 2 is 1. What would be the sine? Sine would be 0. So the sine of 0 degrees is just 0. So, let's try something a little trickier. You say, well, what happens when it's outside the first quadrant? Let's try cosine of 210 degrees. Your teacher said, what is the cosine of 210 degrees? Well, you still have to understand the basics of the unit circle. You still have to understand reference angles, and hopefully you've had a conversation with your teachers about reference angles. So there's 180. We're going to go a little bit past 180, and we're going to get to 210 degrees, somewhere around there. I went a little far. Now remember, reference angles are how far away you are from the x-axis, either 180 degrees or mostly just worried about 180 and 360. If you're in the first quadrant, it is a reference angle. Anytime else, you're worried about how far you are away from 180 or how far away you are from 360. So in this case, it's 30 degrees. So my reference angle is 30 degrees. All right, well, that helps. That helps. Now I know my reference angle is 30 degrees. So now I go back and I say, okay, get rid of 30 degrees. How many fingers to the left? 1, 2, 3. How many fingers to the right? 1. Now, you also have to remember that you're in the third quadrant. And in the third quadrant, cosine is negative. So it's just negative, radical 3/2. So yes, this trick helps you find the correct value. You still have to understand the idea about sines. All right, let's try another one. Let's try the sine of 150 degrees. Okay, so sine of 150, that puts me right about there. That's 150 degrees. How far am I from 180? Oops, 30 degrees again. So let's get rid of the 30-degree finger. Gone. 3 to the left, 1 to the right. Okay, so wait a second, what's positive? So x's are negative over here, and sine, or the y values, are positive. So it's just 1/2. All right, you want something harder. So we'll try one more sine harder, and then we'll do some, well, how about this? How about we do this? I didn't talk about this. What about the sine of 90 degrees? Okay, let's get rid of the finger for 90 degrees. I didn't do 90 degrees. So 0 to the left, 0, 4 to the right. Sine is the square root of 4 over 2. The square root of 4 is 2. 2 over 2 is 1. All right, that wasn't too bad. How about we try some tangents and some cotangents? Well, you want to try one more hard? All right, so let's try one more hard. How about the cosine of 315 degrees? Now, if it ends in a 5, there's like a 95% chance the reference angle is 45 degrees. So 45, get rid of the middle finger. 2 on the left, 2 on the right, square root of 2, square root of 2. So wait a second, we're in the fourth quadrant, and down there the y values are negative. So I'd have to put a negative there, but it doesn't affect cosine at all. It's square root of 2 over 2. All right, now we're ready. Let's try to see what happens when we do some of the other trig functions. What's going on when I do the other trig functions? So let's start with just tangent. Now, tangent's going to be a little funky. I'll go through a little bit with tangent. Let's say tangent, let's do the easy one, tangent of 45 degrees. Okay, so tangent of 45 degrees. 45 degrees, we'll get rid of the middle finger. Square root of 2, square root of 2. All right, now you have to remember, and we talked about this a little while ago, that tangent is really y over x. When we're dealing with the unit circles, really y over x. So what I have to do is I have to divide these two things. The square root of 2 over 2 divided by the square root of 2 over 2. Now when you divide by a fraction, what happens is you multiply by the reciprocal. So what I'm going to do is multiply by the reciprocal, which is 2 over the square root of 2. Well, notice what happens to the 2's. They cancel. And the square root, well, really what I end up with is 2 square roots of 2 over 2 square roots of 2. But I don't really need these 2's. And the square root of 2 over the square root of 2 is just 1. So it's just 1. Now that seemed awful complicated. Let me do one more complicated, and then I'm going to try to make tangent a little easier for you. Let's do tangent of 30 degrees. So I'll come over here. Tangent of 30 degrees. Now, I keep erasing this. You're like, well, I don't have time for draw a hand. That's what you have your hand for. That's what 30 degrees. You get rid of a finger. All right, I'm just showing you what I'm going to do here. I'm getting rid of the finger. So 3 to the left, 1 to the right. All right, so tangent is y over x. 1/2 divided by the square root of 3 over 2. Now what we're going to do is multiply by the reciprocal. I'm going to make this easier for you. The reciprocal is 2 over the square root of 3. Now notice the 2's cancel. Didn't the 2's cancel on the last one? And the 2's are going to cancel on this one. So this really becomes 1 over radical 3, which your teacher's not going to allow you to leave. You have to multiply by radical 3 over radical 3. It's called rationalizing the denominator, making it a rational number. And you end up with the square root of 3 over 3. So I want to try to make your life easier. So let's do the tangent. And this only works for tangent. This is kind of the one little minor extra trick for tangent. Let's do tangent of 60 degrees. And so here's how it works. The tangent of 60, so we cross this off. I put 1 here, and I put 3 here. Oops, I forgot. I got to get rid of this one. So I got 3 to the right, 1 to the left. So in tangent, I don't really need these things. I'm just going to get rid of the 2's. And it's y over x, square root of 3 over the square root of 1, or just the square root of 3. I don't need the y values. I don't need these 2's on the bottom. That's the extra trick with tangent you can use. Okay? So let's try a very difficult one. Let's try a hard one. Well, let me come back, and then I'll try a couple more, and we'll be done. Okay, so let's try the tangent of 330 degrees. Well, the first thing I got to do, again, it's how far away are you from 180 or 360? Now, you should realize, oh, I'm only 30 away. And it's pretty easy. I'm 30 away from 180 or from 360. So my reference angle is 30 degrees. And you have to find the reference angle every time. You can't get around that. The old way you couldn't get around that. But that's not difficult. You guys can handle that. So let me get rid of this. All right, 30 degrees. We get rid of that finger. And I have 3 to the left, 1 to the right. Now, tangent is equal to y over x. Again, I don't need the 2's, so it's really just the square root of 1 over the square root of 3. Well, that's really 1 over radical 3, multiplied by square root of 3 over 3. And I get the square root of 3 over 3. Now, if you just do that and you do it like a trained monkey and you go, I'm done, you've forgotten about one very important thing, and that's the signs. In the fourth quadrant, cosine is positive, but sine is negative. So when I do the sine over cosine, it's really negative. It's really negative. So my answer turns out to be negative. So you still have to think about the basics. All right, you ready for some hard ones? Now let's get some crazy ones that your teachers probably wouldn't even be, ask you. And now I can ask you very quickly, and I think you can come up with the answer pretty quickly. So I'm going to ask you a crazy one, and you see if you can come up with it. Cotangent of 225 degrees. That's a really, really hard one for kids. Well, it ends in a 5, so my reference angle is going to be 45 degrees. It's in the third quadrant, and I know both sine and cosine are negative in the third quadrant. So 45 degrees, boom, 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 square root of 2, square root of 2. So negative, and so what I end up with is, again, because it's cotangent, tangent and cotangent, I don't need the 2's on the denominator. It's really negative radical 2 over negative radical 2, which is just 1. Cotangent and tangent are the ones we're not going to use in denominators, because when I multiply by the reciprocal, they go away. So I don't need them. All right, let's try again. Let me try a really hard one. Ready for a really hard one? All right. I want the secant of 120 degrees. Okay. 120 degrees. There it is. I'm 60 away from 180. Again, it's from 180 or 360. I'm 60 away. So I'm going to get rid of the 60 finger. 1 to the left and 3 to the right. Now, how am I going to do secant? Well, you still have to know some mathematics, kids. Secant is the reciprocal function of cosine. So I'm not really going to find secant of 120. I want to find cosine of 120. Oh, there it is. It's 1/2. Well, if the cosine is 1/2, then if this is the reciprocal, it's really just 2 over 1, or just 2. But wait a second, I'm in the second quadrant. You always have to ask yourself what quadrant you're in. Because all of this cool stuff over here, all of this stuff over here, all of this stuff over here only works in the first quadrant, and then you have to worry about the signs. It works everywhere, but you have to worry about the signs. And in the second quadrant, cosine and therefore secant are both negative. So the answer is -2. All right, ready for a really difficult one? Let's try the cosecant of 240 degrees. All right, 240 degrees puts me in the third quadrant. I'm actually 60 degrees away. So really what I'm thinking about is 60. Get rid of 60. 60's gone. And I said, okay, 1 to the left and 3 to the right. Now, cosecant is the reciprocal function with sine. Well, let's see. Sine in the third quadrant for a 60-degree reference angle is square root of 3 over 2, but it's negative. So cosecant would just be the reciprocal of that, -2 over radical 3. Now, of course, you have to rationalize. Now, rationalizing shouldn't be too bad. Square root of 2 over 2. Or square root of 3 over the square root of 3. And so I end up with negative radical, oh, I think my head's annoying, negative 2 square roots of 3 over 3. All right, let's try again. Last hard one, and I think you got this. So practice with this, and you'll see that it goes pretty quickly. Let me ask a really odd one. What is the, let's go with secant of 300 degrees. Okay, 300 degrees. Third quadrant, fourth quadrant, 300 degrees. I'm 60 away from 360, so my reference angle is 60 degrees. 60 degrees, get rid of it. 1 to the left, 3 to the right. Now, in the fourth quadrant, the y's or the sines are negative, so that's going to be negative. Okay. Okay, wait a second. The reciprocal function of this is with cosine. Cosine. Cosine is 1/2. Oh, but it's positive, so this is just the reciprocal of that, which is just 2. All right, that was an easy one. One more hard one. One more crazy difficult one. And again, using this method, I don't have to memorize. I just have to memorize how to find reference angles, and I can move on. All right, so let's go tangent. No, let's go cotangent. Let's go really crazy. Cotangent of 330 degrees. Okay, so my reference angle is fourth quadrant, 30 degrees. So really we're looking at 30. That's our reference angle. Get rid of 30. All right. 3 to the left, 1 to the right. Because it's tangent and cotangent, I'm not going to worry about these 2's. So it's, wait a second, tangent is y, well, that's a y, over x. So cotangent is x over y. Square root of 3 over the square root of 1, which is just the square root of 3. Now, wait a second. I'm in the fourth quadrant. Aren't sines negative in the fourth quadrant? So this is really positive over negative, which makes it negative. Still have to worry about the signs. You still have to worry about reference angles. But finding those really crazy fractions, hopefully this makes a little bit more sense for you. All right, so hopefully you got a little bit out of this. Watch it again, see if you understand what's going on. I hope so. Hope this helped out. All right, kids, take it easy. Catch you on the flip side. Bye. Oh, yeah, hit the subscribe button, and don't forget to drink Dunkin' Donuts coffee. They're a sponsor. Not, but I wish they were.